Welcome to Dust History. They sealed Elizabeth Tudor's body in lead within hours of her death. One lady who saw what was beneath her clothes couldn't stop vomiting. For 400 years, Britain has denied every request to examine her remains. Other royal bodies have been studied, but never hers. Why? Because what her doctor saw in 1566 left him so shaken he died a year later without ever speaking about it. The Virgin Queen's virginity wasn't a choice. It was a medical secret so dangerous it had to be buried forever. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what they've been hiding. Elizabeth I's virginity has been celebrated for over 400 years as a symbol of power, sacrifice, and strength. History tells us she chose independence over marriage, that she sacrificed personal happiness for England's sake. But here's what they don't tell you. Her virginity wasn't a noble choice. It was a desperate cover-up for a physical condition so shocking that revealing it would have destroyed the entire Tudor dynasty. The truth was so dangerous that when she died, they sealed her body in lead within hours and have refused to open that tomb ever since. What secret about her body was worth hiding for 4 centuries? When Anne Boleyn's head hit the scaffold, 3-year-old Elizabeth learned a lesson that would haunt her forever. Women who fail their husbands die. She watched Catherine Howard beheaded at 21 for adultery. She saw Catherine Parr nearly destroyed by childbirth. The message was clear. A woman's body belongs to her husband, and that ownership kills. But Elizabeth's fear went deeper than trauma. As she grew up, she became obsessed with control, not just politically but physically. Because even as a teenager, she knew something about herself that she could never admit. Her body wasn't like other women's, and if anyone discovered the truth, her claim to the throne would evaporate. So she began building the greatest deception in English history. When Elizabeth became queen in 1558 at age 25, she faced immediate pressure to marry and produce an heir. It wasn't a request. It was the primary duty of any queen. Her council, parliament, foreign ambassadors, everyone demanded the same thing. Choose a husband, consummate the marriage, get pregnant, secure the succession. For any other queen, this would be standard procedure. For Elizabeth, it was an existential threat, because marriage meant a wedding night. A wedding night meant physical intimacy, and physical intimacy would reveal what she'd spent her entire life hiding. So she invented a strategy that had never been tried before. She would use the promise of marriage as a political weapon while never actually going through with it. Philip II of Spain wanted to marry her to absorb England into his empire. She strung him along for years, using the negotiations to keep Spain from invading. The Archduke Charles, Eric of Sweden, the Duke of Anjou, each one became a chess piece in her game. She'd express interest, negotiate dowries, discuss terms, then find reasons to delay. Her council thought she was indecisive. Parliament thought she was stubborn. Foreign ambassadors thought she was playing games. They were all wrong. Elizabeth wasn't choosing not to marry. She literally couldn't marry, because consummating a marriage would expose a physical reality that would destroy everything. Then came Robert Dudley, and Elizabeth made a critical mistake. She fell in love. Dudley was her childhood friend, devastatingly handsome, ambitious, Protestant, perfect in every way except one. He was married. When his wife Amy Robsart died under suspicious circumstances in 1560, rumors exploded that they'd murdered her so they could marry. Elizabeth wanted to marry him anyway. She was in love. She was queen. Maybe Dudley would understand. Maybe he already knew. But her advisors threatened revolt. The scandal would destroy her legitimacy. Marrying Dudley after his wife's suspicious death would prove she was controlled by lust, that she was weak, that she was just another woman ruled by her desires. So she made the hardest decision of her life. She kept Dudley close but refused to marry him. For 30 years, they remained inseparable. He became Earl of Leicester. She gave him estates, titles, power, but never marriage, never physical consummation. Because she couldn't. When Dudley was dying in 1588, he wrote her a final letter. Elizabeth kept it tied with a ribbon until her own death, marked in her handwriting. His last letter. In it, Dudley mentioned the truth we alone know, the secret that bound us in sorrow rather than joy. What was that truth? Why sorrow instead of joy? The answer historians avoid. Dudley knew about Elizabeth's physical condition. He knew why she could never marry him or anyone else. He knew the virginity was forced, not chosen. And he loved her anyway, which made it even more tragic. Foreign ambassadors started noticing things about Elizabeth that didn't quite add up. Trained diplomats who'd observed courts across Europe began writing strange reports back to their kings. A Spanish envoy noted that Her Majesty's form is not as other women's before being abruptly recalled. A Venetian ambassador described her as having more the bearing of a soldier than a lady. They mentioned her unusually deep voice, her height, her strength. These weren't insults or compliments. They were confused observations from men trying to describe something they'd never encountered before. A woman whose physical characteristics didn't quite match what they expected. The Virgin Queen narrative provided perfect cover. If Elizabeth chose to remain unmarried and untouched, then of course she'd be different from other women. The virginity explained away everything suspicious, turning potential red flags into evidence of her unique dedication to England. But these diplomats weren't commenting on her personality or political choices. They were describing her physical body, and what they saw troubled them enough to document it in official reports. The truth becomes clearer when you look at what her own doctors witnessed. In 1566, Elizabeth fell seriously ill with fever and pain so severe she thought she was dying. Her physicians were finally allowed to examine her, something rarely permitted because the Queen's body was sacred and untouchable. Dr. Hwick emerged from her chambers looking, according to contemporary accounts, pale and troubled, as if he had seen something that shook him. He refused to discuss what he'd found. Not with other doctors, not with the council, not in any private correspondence. A year later, he was dead from sudden fever. When your doctor sees something so shocking he can't speak of it, then dies mysteriously, that's not coincidence. That's damage control. In 1568 came another revealing incident that was quickly buried. Elizabeth collapsed during a council meeting. When her ladies got her to her private chambers and began loosening her elaborate clothing, one of them fainted. The others immediately cleared the room and never spoke of what they saw beneath those layers of fabric and corsetry. Think about that. These were women who dressed Elizabeth daily, who attended to her most intimate needs, who'd seen her in every state of undress. What could shock them so badly that one passed out and the rest maintained absolute silence for the rest of their lives? Modern medical historians have a theory that explains everything: androgen insensitivity syndrome, or AIS. AIS is a condition where someone has XY chromosomes, meaning genetically male, but their body doesn't respond to testosterone during development. The result is someone who appears externally female, often strikingly beautiful, but lacks functional female reproductive organs internally. People with complete AIS are typically tall, have little body hair, deeper voices than average, and can never menstruate or become pregnant. They appear completely female on the outside but cannot consummate a marriage in the expected way or produce children. If Elizabeth had AIS, everything makes sense. The masculine qualities diplomats noticed: the unusually tall, strong frame and deep voice, the shock on her doctors' faces when they examined her, the reason why marriage was impossible, not just politically difficult, the secret Dudley mentioned that bound them in sorrow, the decades-long deception about her virginity. She wasn't choosing celibacy as a power move. She was hiding a physical reality that, if discovered, would have made her illegitimate in the eyes of Tudor England. A queen who couldn't produce an heir wasn't just useless. She was dangerous. She was a fraud. So Elizabeth took the one option available. She turned necessity into virtue and made virginity her brand. But maintaining this deception required more than just avoiding marriage. It required transforming her entire physical appearance into an untouchable, almost inhuman icon. Enter the poison. Venetian ceruse, a makeup made from white lead mixed with vinegar, sometimes enhanced with arsenic to make it adhere better. Elizabeth applied this toxic mixture to her face every single day for 45 years. This wasn't vanity. It was strategic erasure of her humanity. The ghostly white skin made her look otherworldly, ageless, untouchable. It reinforced the Virgin Queen mythology by making her appear more symbol than woman. Lead is a neurotoxin that absorbs through skin into your bloodstream, bones, and brain. Chronic lead poisoning causes severe headaches, abdominal pain, joint pain, mood swings, memory problems, insomnia, and anemia. Elizabeth suffered all of these throughout her reign. By her 40s, her skin was flaking and damaged. By her 50s, she had open sores that wouldn't heal. They covered the sores with more makeup, which made them worse, requiring even more makeup. A vicious cycle. By her 60s, secret testimonies described patches of blackened necrotic flesh on her face and neck, weeping yellow fluid, tissue death from decades of lead exposure. But she couldn't stop. Every public appearance required that ageless mask because any sign of physical decay would remind people she was human, mortal, and therefore vulnerable. If she looked weak, Spain would invade. If she looked old, nobles would question her fitness to rule. If she looked like a regular woman instead of an icon, people might start asking questions about why the Virgin Queen had never married. The lead poisoning was slowly killing her, but it was also protecting her greatest secret. By making herself look inhuman, she avoided scrutiny of her actual human body. The corset was the other instrument of disguise. Tudor fashion demanded a specific silhouette: rigid, triangular, completely flat-chested torso with a tiny waist. Elizabeth wore corsets reinforced with whalebone and steel, laced 6 to 8 inches tighter than normal, every single day for 45 years. This wasn't about fashion. It was about hiding her natural body shape. If Elizabeth had AIS, her body might not have developed the curves expected of a woman. The extreme corsetry created an artificial female silhouette while crushing her internal organs. Her ribs bent inward permanently. Her lungs couldn't fully expand. Her liver was compressed and displaced. When they finally cut the corset off her corpse, her torso was covered in grooves so deep they looked carved. The outline of the corset structure was imprinted into her skin and bone like a fossil. But this torture served a purpose. It made her body conform to what people expected a queen's body to look like, regardless of what lay beneath. The corset, like the makeup, was armor against discovery. The 1580s brought Elizabeth's greatest test: the Spanish Armada. 130 ships, 30,000 men. The largest invasion force England had ever faced. Elizabeth was 54, suffering from chronic lead poisoning, barely able to breathe in her crushing corset, depressed after decades of maintaining an impossible deception. And she rode out to Tilbury in armor to deliver the most famous speech of her reign. "I know I have the body of a weak, feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king." That line has been celebrated for 400 years as feminist empowerment. But listen to it again, knowing what Elizabeth was hiding. She's literally telling them her body is wrong for a woman while claiming a masculine spirit. It's not empowerment. It's the closest she ever came to telling the truth. What they don't mention is that Elizabeth was so weak before that speech, her ladies had to lift her into the saddle. They gave her wine mixed with stimulants to keep her alert. For 3 hours, she performed the warrior queen. Afterwards, she collapsed completely and couldn't leave her chambers for a week. Every triumph cost her physically because maintaining the Virgin Queen illusion was destroying her body piece by piece. Robert Dudley died in 1588, and Elizabeth locked herself in her rooms for days. The only person who knew her secret was gone. She wore his last letter in a pouch around her neck until her own death. She tried to replace him with Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex, Dudley's stepson, 20 years younger. She adored him. Then he betrayed her in the worst possible way. He burst into her private chambers one morning unannounced while Elizabeth was in her nightgown without her wig or makeup. Essex froze in shock at her real face. Elizabeth never forgave him for seeing her without the mask, for glimpsing the reality beneath the icon. When Essex attempted a rebellion in 1601, she signed his execution warrant while weeping. But she signed it because he'd seen too much. After Essex's death, Elizabeth stopped maintaining the deception as carefully. She was 70 years old and exhausted from decades of hiding. By 1600, she'd lost most of her teeth from the lead and sugar. She stuffed her cheeks with cloth to maintain her face's shape, making speech difficult. Her hair was gone, replaced by wigs so heavy they caused constant headaches. Her hands shook, her eyesight failed, and multiple sources mentioned a smell. A corruption in Her Majesty's body that no perfume could disguise. Something inside Elizabeth was rotting while she still lived. January 1603, Elizabeth stops wearing the makeup. Just stops. Her ladies are horrified, but she doesn't care anymore. Let them look, she says. She stops eating because swallowing has become agony. Her abdomen swells grotesquely with fluid from organ failure, making the Virgin Queen look pregnant. A cruel final joke. Then she refuses to lie down. For weeks, she sits in chairs or leans against cushions on the floor while her ladies hold her upright. Once I lie in that bed, I shall never rise again, she says. Maybe lying down put unbearable pressure on her damaged organs. Maybe she was delirious, or maybe she was refusing to surrender even at the end. On March 23, 1603, they get her to gesture toward James of Scotland as her heir. That night, she finally collapses. They carry her to the royal bed. Her breathing is labored, irregular. As dawn approaches on March 24th, her breathing becomes shallower, then stops. Elizabeth Tudor is dead at 69, and immediately the cover-up begins. Doors locked, guards posted, only the most trusted ladies allowed to remain. Because what they're about to see in that room is the reason Britain has kept her tomb sealed for 400 years. When they begin undressing her corpse, the horror emerges layer by layer. The makeup comes off in sheets, taking skin with it. Beneath isn't the face of an old woman but blackened, ulcerated necrotic tissue from decades of lead eating through her flesh. One lady vomits and has to be removed. The corset comes next. When they cut it away, grooves are carved so deep into her torso you can see bone. Her ribs have bent inward. Some are cracked. The corset's outline is permanently imprinted like she was molded by it. But none of that is the real secret they're protecting. When they remove the final layers of clothing and examine between her legs, the servant who sees it can only describe it as wrong. Either absent or malformed, she can't articulate which in her shock. This is what Elizabeth spent 70 years hiding. This is why the Virgin Queen could never marry. Not because she chose power over love, not because she was married to England, but because her body made consummation impossible. If she'd married, the wedding night would have exposed everything. Her legitimacy would have crumbled. Civil war would have erupted. So she turned biological necessity into political genius and made everyone believe virginity was her choice. They wrap her body immediately. No careful washing, no proper preparation. They seal her in lead within hours. Faster than any royal burial in history. The coffin is closed before rigor mortis fully sets. The servants who witnessed it are scattered across England within days, sent to different estates with orders never to speak. The doctors who attended her final illness, 3 die within a year. The funeral is spectacular propaganda, but rushed. They want that body underground before questions multiply. James becomes king and ensures Elizabeth's tomb stays sealed forever. Because the Virgin Queen's virginity wasn't a triumph. It was a cover-up. For 100 years later, that tomb remains locked. Every request to examine her remains has been denied. In 1952, during Elizabeth II's coronation, historians asked, denied. In 1975, when new scanning technology could examine without disturbing, they asked again. Denied. In 2003, on the 400th anniversary, multiple universities petitioned. Denied. Meanwhile, they've allowed examination of other royals. Richard III was exhumed and studied extensively. Other Tudor burials investigated. Why not Elizabeth? Because whatever's in that lead coffin doesn't match the legend. And the legend of the Virgin Queen, who chose power over marriage, who sacrificed personal happiness for England, who ruled alone in glorious independence, is too valuable to risk. The Virgin Queen mythology has inspired women for 400 years as a symbol of choosing independence over marriage. But it was never a choice. It was a necessity forced by a physical condition she could never reveal. Britain chose to bury the truth and build a legend. Some secrets are too valuable to empires to ever let out. The dark truth about Elizabeth's virginity isn't that she rejected men. It's that her body made that rejection mandatory. And for 400 years, they've protected that secret in a sealed lead coffin that will never be opened. If this revelation blew your mind, subscribe right now, because this channel exists to expose the historical lies they've built entire nations on. There are dozens more stories like this, truths they've hidden for centuries that completely change how you see history. Drop a comment with what shocked you most, whether you think they should open the tomb, or what other historical figures you want investigated next. I read every comment, and your theories push these investigations further. And hit that like button to force this video in front of more people who deserve to know that Elizabeth I celebrated virginity wasn't empowerment. It was the greatest medical cover-up in royal history.